really I found interesting regarding the postmodern narrative is a purely personal perspective to say on gender. As my paper goes, that body at risk, the concept of risk, as Mark Botha has applied, that the concept of vulnerability, something which is put at the threshold of future to say. I have tried, it's a work in progress, is definitely not a properly completed project as of yet to say. I have tried to apply it to the concept of postmodern bodies to say, especially the female bodies. So whenever we talk about and I have just selected some text as it is not possible within a 10 minutes presentation to incorporate all the text possible to say. But what I have tried to do here is that, take the concept of this pandemic, take the concept of the body at risk and try to see whether the postmodern future, as we all are talking about postmodern narratives to say, is it a genderless future? Because most of the postmodern narrative, they try to project a genderless future apparently. I would say, I would just say that it is apparently. Apparently, it is a genderless future where like all genders are fluid. The moment we talk about postmodernism, we teach in the class and we just celebrate chaos, ruptures, fluidity. But my idea is that are we in such a fluid future? Is the future so fluid when it comes to gender, and especially as we all know it's just a cliche to say that gender is centered on on bodies to say, because when just to give you the example of the pandemic, when the pandemic hits, it doesn't really differentiate between the male body and the female body. All bodies are put at risk to say, everybody is put at a vulnerable threshold. So when I look at postmodern feminism to say, and great theories talking about the ideas of cyborg, ideas of all the normative discourses, and when we try to apply and read the text to say, my argument here is that I don't see, although all the texts, movies, films, documentaries, there are various ways they talk about a genderless future where you see that gender is merely a category to say. But I have my opinion here is that I found that even the postmodern narrative is also extremely gendered to say and extremely normative in nature. So there are some few texts which I have chosen which are very familiar to everyone, and the text I think everyone has read, watched to say. So very common texts I have chosen to say. And whenever I go through the text or teach, the students come and say that postmodern future is always a genderless future, always an identity-less future to say. But as your platform has also been discussing, are we really in such a state to say? So addressing such questions, like I would like to begin the points of my argument to say that what I have explored in my paper is I try to establish in my paper that the normative discourse, which is centered on body, which is basically centered on the representation of female body, that is also there very much in postmodern narratives. Apparently, for example, if we take the case of neuromancer to say, you find that there is a robotic, a post-human subject, female subject to say, but you see, in terms of a representation, is she actually represented as such? If we look at her glass skin, her razor nails to say, she's apparently, let's say, a robotic human being to say, but all efforts are made on the part of the writer to make her feminine. My question lies there. Why is it necessity? My paper is full of questions, as the audience might find that I don't have might not have answers to say. But my question is there, that part of the text. Why they need to be feminine? Why they need to be feminine? And in opposition, if you look at the protagonist case, why is he made so kind of weak and effeminate? If I remember yesterday's lecture to say, we were discussing kids and the talk about effeminacy and the postmodern narrative to say, why such a trend is even followed in a narrative, in a postmodern narrative where we celebrate fluidity. So, and going by this kind of dictum to say, if we read the text more, and then we come to the text like Queen of Angels. Queen of Angels, I find it more interesting to say, looking at it from the angle of the artificial implants, the ways to make marriage joy a feminine, okay, a Robocop, but a feminine one to say. So, if we have gone through the text, then the audience will really identify with me that the series of implants which she undergoes to say, the series of implants and from fertility to skin to the ability to control eyes, eye movement, everything as if like it is said in such a manner that she has. I apologize for the sound, Richu, as I already
No
I
problem,
can't
I'll
help
just.
it.
The train has to go now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this transformative changes like which we have in a novel. So when I read it, it strikes me why those changes are there. Just a curious reader. So coming from these ideas to say again, if you you come to these transformative changes to say, especially the implants. If we will go back and read the history of cosmetic surgeries and all to say, especially in US, then you will find that these implants and everything, these are basically a way of enhancing beauty to say. But in a narrative, in a postmodern narrative, when we're referring to such implants, such ways of feminizing the female body, but female, I took it here, quote unquote, because is it a real female to say? Okay. Even when a man, so the discourse of body is centering again on the femininity itself, even if it is not a proper human being, we are not trying to humanizing the body, we're trying to make it feminine to say. Okay, so that's something again brings us to the concept of risk to say that the female body wherever it is at risk, it is put at the vulnerable threshold, like because the man there is not going through any kind of transplants, any kind of changes. For example, neuromancer, if you see, case has been a weak person from the beginning to say his passivity is and Molly's like active nature has always been contrasted. That's a different thing to say. But at the same time, is it like going by the novelist? Is it like a projection of the postmodern future? And again, if we come to the recent sci-fi fictions and depictions of movies and all, my concern here is that the way the female body is depicted, I think everybody will agree with me, is that whether a superhero who is a woman, okay, is made not a superhero, first a woman first, then a superhero. In terms of looks, in terms of the in terms of the makeup, in terms of the goods, in terms of the representation of the body to say. So my reading of my postmodern reading, as you can say, that I'm not an expert, but whatever I read, and the paper is a product of that, that makes me think of not the conclusion, but the argument is that has postmodernism changed our perspective of gender? I have a feel that it hasn't. It has put the female body more at risk of not risk in terms of not centering on the material body, but artificial, not only the artificial intelligence, but also the artificial implants, artificial body implants. And in terms of that, no, the postmodern, we might take the concept of cyborg, focus bypass, but the thing is that women are at risk. I mean, at least the representation of women, I'm not trying to generalize, but the representation of women in movies, especially in the movies which talk about the postmodern feminism also. So, and that is why perhaps, what Judith Butler has said, that gender will always remain a performance. It cannot just go beyond that level of performance. That recent novel by Lawrence Dukes to say, where also like I don't know whether like it's that novel is very academically acclaimed or not after Land, because it also describes the pandemic, a manless, a manless future where you see the mother is hiding the son and they are trying to look for an escape to say. No, that also the novel also tries to project a future. It takes a different term to say a genderless, a manless future to say. But that is also the novel also has some glitches here and there. It cannot really establish what exactly it is trying to say. So this strategy, the strategy which is being projected in such novels to say, and the female bodies is it fine? Should I
I think 10 minutes over. You have 2 more minutes.
Okay. I'll sum up. I'll sum up. So the point which I would like to wind up my argument with that definitely postmodern bodies are transgressive. All postmodern bodies are transgressive in nature, whether it's male or female to say. But the representation of female bodies in postmodern discourse is still gendered, as I feel from my reading. My reading might be limited to say, but that is what I would like to say. It's extremely vulnerable, and in terms of representational apparatus also which is being used is put at risk all the time. It's always on a vulnerable threshold of, you can say that it's socio-cultural, it can be socio-economic also, because cosmetic industry will be uh, a socio-economic basically. So that's what I would just like to conclude with. Thank you so much. I would invite your suggestions to say and
Yeah, thank
questions.
you, Sanghamitra ma'am. That was an interesting deliberation. I would say a contemplation, a nice contemplation to begin the day with, spawning more questions than answers, and obviously it was. Am I not audible, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, okay. Train of thoughts, right? Train of thoughts.
Yeah, train of thoughts.
Okay.
Disturbance is entirely
Mm,
from my side.
no, not an issue, ma'am. It happens. So it was interesting, and I was just saying that more questions than answers, and I really like the way you put your thoughts into a postmodern order. I would say, without answering many questions, but yeah, giving suggestions with the apparent always in the background. That was interesting. Dear participants, please come up with your questions and suggestions, and maybe if you have answers to some of these questions that Sanghamitra ma'am has raised about corporeality and the gendered body in the postmodern. Is the gendered body vulnerable? Female gendered, vulnerable. How much is it
Excuse me, ma'am.
vulnerable? Yes,
Good
Shatakshi.
morning.
Please go ahead.
Uh, Hello, ma'am. May I ask you a question, please?
Oh, sure, sure. Sure.
Uh, Ma'am, what is your concept of fake feminism? We hear this word nowadays very much. What is your concept of fake feminism?
Okay, thank you, Shatakshi. I think Shatakshi. Yes. The concept of fake feminism, as you have raised, is that and the problem is what with the word fake. Like in my parlance, can we really call it a fake feminism to say? The better term will be like an alternative way of looking at it to say, rather than fake feminism. For example, because in fake feminism also you are concerned about the terms, the concepts which you are really talking about to say. So rather than calling it a fake feminism, better will be, in theoretical parlance, nothing can be fake as such. And in literature, this is a term which I find it a bit problematic to say. So, Satakshi, could I answer your question? I don't think so. You can enlighten me a bit more.
No, ma'am, you said it right
I,
that the problem is with the term because
yeah,
feminism, those who
yeah,
don't understand feminism properly are biased with fake feminism. So
yeah.
their kind of feminism is fake, but feminism is always real
Yeah,
and
because
rational.
you're using
Yeah,
feminism, and at the same time you're taking the term and also applying fake. It's like, that postmodern grand narrative which you are getting entangled. I don't know. Maybe it's because I have lot of problems with terms. Just applying terms and applying, especially theoretical terms. We
yes,
have
ma'am.
a tendency to apply terms just like that. So so, as an academician, this is a problem which I face. That
Yeah.
can all the terms be applied everywhere? Feminism and then also fake. So
Mm,
that is what. Yeah.
okay,
Let's
ma'am.
not enter
Thank you.
into an aporia early in the morning.
Mhm.
Yeah. Any more questions, friends?
Hmm. Ma'am, yesterday also I had this doubt. I mean, in the postmodern world, we are seeing the feminizing of the female body and the more masculinizing of the male body, whether it is in science fiction, romantic novel, anything. But you talked about gender fluidity. How do you think that that is being cemented here? How do you think the representation of the third gender is being more third gendered?
Richu, third gender, like I haven't really explored that much to say. Okay. Honestly speaking, it's no point giving you a kind of baseless answer which I don't know. Basically, I was just working on the representation of female body to say. But regarding the question of third gender, the gender, I would like to say is that postmodern narratives also. hmm, Whenever we talk about postmodern narratives and representation of gender, then the first question comes that fluidity of gender means like gender to say representation of that. But if you look at text very closely to say, okay, I haven't analyzed all the texts which are present to say, but again, you see the genderless narrative will not be there. Even the third gender will also be represented in just some kind of typical manner. One of my friends is working on representation of third gender in autobiographies to say. From her, whatever ideas I get, I haven't done much work on that area. That she tells me that even in the representation of third gender also, it is being made sure that they are represented as such. So again, it all brings us to the politics of representation, which I found very, very interesting. For example, like how the gender is okay, biological, social, so much of ideas are there, we all agree with that. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to look at is the politics of representation. See, what the way I'll be represented, it all depends on the way perhaps the state wants me to be represented. That there is a politics of representation. There is no way we can escape it. Literature cannot escape. Even literature, movies, none of us we can escape that. That there's big eyes to say. So that is what I will definitely try to work on transgender representation of transgender bodies, and if possible, get back to you.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. You have answered my question sufficiently. It all burns down to politics. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sanghamitra ma'am. Let's move on to the next session. Thank you so much for that wonderful deliberation, putting the female body at risk. Let us move on to the next presentation. Yes, fine. Next is
Diana,
Diana
ma'am,
Monisha. Yes.
you can go ahead. You're mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I am Dana Monisha. I'm a 360 research scholar. Am I audible?
If you can be a bit more audible. Uh,
Can you hear me now?
yes,
Am I
yes.
audible,
Yeah, fine. Go ahead.
or should I do without the
No, fine,
headphone?
fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So I am from Vellore. I do my PhD under Dr. Vernam Cecilia from the Department of English, Auxilium College. I am here to talk about freedom as an important entity in Elif Shafak 10 minutes 38 seconds in this strange world. Now, this novel is nothing but an amalgamation of experiences. The novel opens with the death of the protagonist and the narrator. She's shot dead, and after the physical death happens, the preceding 10 minutes and 38 seconds helps her in recalling, brain functions in recall of her entire life. So we see the documentation of her entire life. So now, as we get into the experiences of the character, I think I can approach this novel from a phenomenological perspective. So, because of course, experiences and
Madam,
study-related experiences.
if you can put the audio speaker closer, it will be audible. Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes. Fine.
Is it clear?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, you
Okay.
can.
So yeah, since I'm saying that the human related studies cannot be done without gender embodiment or impact of subjectivity is of course essential. Since we are talking about it, I would like to give a little preface to my narrator, the character Leila from the novel. Leila is coming from an Orthodox family who follows Islamic conventions, but forced into a situation to get married to a boy whose father would have recurrently abused her since childhood. So she decides to leave the family and comes to Istanbul, and there she's pushed into a situation where she becomes a sex worker. Now, Shafak, as an activist herself, has written two segments in this novel. I see this novel as two segments. The first part of the novel shows us that she is with her family, but she becomes a rebel within the family. And the character Laila is shown as a character who keeps questioning the Islamic conventions and every rule that she is being imposed into it. So basically, her individuality is at stake when she's with her family. But when she moves out of the family and she becomes a sex worker too, there is a sense of freedom that she feels, and she starts becoming an individual soul who decides for herself. Now, since we are talking about Islamic impact in the novel, I would like to bring in freedom as one of the important uh, entities in the entire study of Islam. As we see, the novel itself shows that there are contradictions that is placed between the father and daughter when it comes to the religious aspect. So she experiences a sense of suppression, and she starts questioning, and she becomes someone who is constantly insurgent towards the conventions. So we see the character is extremely aloof inside the family and outside the family also, but there is a sense of freedom when she's alone. Now we see the socially acceptable and socially unacceptable parts in the novel. Because Elif Shafak herself has written this novel based on the Islamic conventions only. But why I have picked this particular novel is because it is the contemporary situation, and it is still prevailing at Turkey. Because the novel where because the character who dies in the novel is derived from an actual incident, and where the sex worker was dead and thrown in a garbage bin. So this is a documentation of real experiences. So I feel in postmodern texts, basically, though we are exploring varieties in a lot of dimensions are given to the postmodern texts, I still feel the sites like Islam and Islamic feminism, particularly, is a little underdone, and or maybe we are not celebrating it or addressing it as much as we should be, ideally. And now coming back to the cultural religious practices that is in the novel, as Shafak has mentioned, Shafak talks about this particular incident where this girl is constantly being molested as a child. But when she tries to address it to her parents, they're not willing to listen to what she has to say regarding this whole thing. So she's traumatized with the incident, and she becomes a rebel within the family and a rebel herself. But when she goes out of the family, she's perfectly all right, and she can deal with people. She gets, in fact, handful of friends who are very helpful, and they even sustain even after she dies. So when she recalls the entire life, there is agony that we can feel. And I think Elif Shafak is trying to put it to us in a very subtle way. Even the author herself couldn't make it abrupt. She's trying to make it in a very subtle way. And I think what I am picking up from this novel is, maybe the author has tried to embark on the religion more, and she's not allowed to embark on it more because it is a very sensitive side. And Turkey, being a country with 99 percentage of population consist of Muslim people, is still a trouble to accept or understand what the actual plight of women in Turkey is. So when we beyond gender, we can also see there are a lot of other controlling cultural practices that people of Turkey still follows. But I think these experiences are kind of creating a controlling system or a pattern that is not allowing an individual to analyze their self identity. Somewhere they're getting lost. And in this particular novel, Leila is getting lost, and she decides to come out of the family because she's not allowed to address her problems. And I think because of the gender, only she is suppressed within the family. And taking reference from the real incident that Shafak has spoken about, we have another dimension to this entire thing. The body of the sex worker who was put in the garbage bin was taken and thrown out somewhere on an empty land. But in the novel, we see there is a particular cemetery she talks about where the destitutes and deserted people are buried. Sadly, this was the reality too. There was a cemetery which actually gave space only for destitutes and the deserted people, but they weren't given names. There were no relatives to address the people. They were only given numbers. So these people are generally, treated with a bias because of the cultural and religious practices. So I'm not trying to say that Islam has very strong or negative religious practices, because I honestly am not an Islamophobic, but I really think in postmodern texts there should be a more of clarity and transparency when we are trying to explore such covered or a little there's no proper vision. I feel we couldn't see what they're doing, though we read the scriptures of Islam, though we read the religious practices of Islam. I think postmodern texts need to reflect more on what exactly is the condition of women of Islam. I also think the men and women, it's not only about the gender. I also think there is a lot of, like, ma'am, you asked about the third gender also. I think Islamic feminism addresses it, but in a very negative way, to put it in my words. I think they don't address it in the way they should actually address it. Now, maybe people are developing, people are broadening their perspectives, but I think an author like Shafak, who tries to talk more about Islam, is still put in a situation where she's not completely given the room to discuss or be transparent about what she says. To analyze this entire thing, I am taking the experiences of the character, and my thesis itself is about the characters, from every character from the work of Elif Shafak, and she's been jailed for talking about it. I think as a thesis, as a scholar, I think I shouldn't leave it unexplored. At least I can give some enlightenment to it, and so I'm trying to focus on it more and more. So my presentation here is about the reflection of Turkey and how it could be an evidence of prevailing condition in Turkey. So that's my time.
Interesting deliberation, Diana. I just have a question. Your paper is titled Feminist Phenomenology in the Novel. Now, where does this phenomenological backdrop appear, or what is the structures of consciousness or structures of experience that you want to portray by giving this title to your paper?
Basically, the experiences here is related to gender specifically, because there are different sets of experiences that we can read in the novel. Because there are, specifically, if I should talk about experiences and consciousness in this novel, there are 5 different friends that we will get to see in the novel, apart from the narrator. There are different set of experiences who actually vary due to their cultural and religious practices, and based on historical norms that's been set already. So we see a trans woman, we see a dwarf woman, we see a boy who is homosexual. We see a lot of different characters who are still experiencing a lot of pressure from the culture. So I think somewhere these characters are springing up to intersectionality, where we see there are there is a difference, there is an analytical framework or a graph through which we can see that the analysis is getting a different crooked when it comes to a particular cultural practice, and it is a little favorable when it comes to particular religious practices. So that is where I am trying to put in phenomenology in this context, feminist phenomenology, because I am particularly talking about women.
There is a suggestion in the chat box. Javi in says a general suggestion.
Okay.
A work towards a cultural studies approach would be better rather than a feminist approach, because you need to be much more well versed in feminism rooted in religion. Okay, yeah, a suggestion, definitely.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
You want to respond to that?
Yes, I shall take it, and I'm actually going to my thesis is a little elaborate, and I'm focusing on intersectional points also. So that is a little. I'm focusing on culture as well. So for this paper, I have taken a segment, but apart from that, I am focusing on the broader perspective.
All right. And I felt this a little disconcerting. Isn't it fraught with danger for us to say something like the postmodernist texts should look more into the actual experiences of women, or actual Islamic faith and actual practices? When we say something like that, isn't it really fraught with a theoretical danger? Why I am saying this is, postmodernism is about playfulness. Postmodernism is never an attempt to provide or give an honest representation of life. It is not a mirror held up to life. It is not a reflection of life. So, how can we expect this postmodernism? I agree with your argument that a better understanding of Islam and its practices would definitely help. But how can we expect this postmodernism to do that? And if we are asking that, can we ask that to postmodern texts? Can we expect postmodern texts to do that?
Yeah, I think I can answer your question, sir, but I don't know if I might be giving justice to it. But I think since we are talking about the contemporary situations, and considering the author I have chosen being a postmodern writer, I see there is a sense of struggle in her way of writing. She's unable to put it out because of certain rules. That is, that maybe it is because of the Turkish politics which led her to be imprisoned, or maybe the general level of acceptance that is stopping her from talking. So, based on her novels, I think there can be a little relaxation, maybe I can put it like that, given to the authors so that they can try and help us understand it through their fictions. Although theorists have explored in vast dimensions about Islam and every endeavor, and in postmodernism, yes, there are a lot of exposure to Islam itself. But I feel as an author, and I think an author is not given sufficient freedom to talk about it as much as a critic is given. So I think
because the author is dead. No, the author cannot do anything. A
no,
soulless author. Yeah.
no, but she's alive. She's
No,
there.
no. Yeah, but the author is dead.
No, she's alive, and I did come in touch
Still,
with
the
her.
author is dead in postmodern.
Yeah,
Metaphorically, not literally.
yeah, that's true.
Okay, ma'am. It was nice, and yeah, I think these are questions that even postmodernism at large should think about, whether they should change a little bit, or there is a problem, because in 2007 they came out with articles like what was postmodernism, suggesting that postmodernism is no longer alive. So And day before yesterday's science sir was saying that we cannot say it is dead because why are we then doing this deliberation on postmodernism if postmodernism is no longer alive? So even probably posterity can tell us better whether we are living in a postmodern world or not. And if we are, then postmodernism may do well to do a postmortem at least of what it
Yes.
has done. Yeah. Thank you. It was interesting. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Thank you
we
so
shall move to
much.
the next presentation.
Thank you, Diana ma'am. Now I invite Anju Rose Abraham.
Hello everyone, I'm Anju Abraham. Am I audible?
Uh, it can
Yeah,
be made more audible, not
not clear.
clear.
It is not
Hello?
clear. You are audible but not clear.
Actually, it might be a net connection problem.
Okay,
Hello?
don't worry. Go ahead. This is a co-authored paper, right? Three authors: Anju Rose Abraham, Yamuna Vijayan, and Vidya
Yeah.
Sathish. Yeah, three
Yeah.
students. Okay, lovely. Nice that you have embarked on this research journey. Yeah, please go ahead. A paper on postmodern feminism. Yes.
Yes. So I'm Anju Abraham. I'm doing my PG from K College Mannanam, and I will be dealing with postmodern feminism as definition and structuralism. So for that, I would like to share my screen. Is it okay?
Yes, sure. Please go ahead.
Okay. Is my PPT visible?
Visible. I guess you made it purposefully dull to
Yeah,
represent the
is it gray?
postmodernity.
Okay. Postmodern feminism. Uh, Postmodern feminism is a new branch of feminism that strives for equality for women within the category of women. Till date, it was usually the most of the theories talked about patriarchy and privilege of men, but postmodernist theories also talk about equality of women within the category of women. That is, it identifies feminist perceptions of society and also says that women are not a single homogeneous category. It also examines how the social work affects different categories of not just women but also the sexualities of women, and the sexualities can range from very different practice of sexual behavior and sexual orientation. It analyzes the role played by power and knowledge relationships in shaping women's perception of social work. Then let's get on to postmodern feminism, feminist theories. Postmodern feminist theories have been seen as grounded in not just postmodernist theories but also in structuralism and post-structuralism and French feminist theories. Uh, it's very interesting to see that in the contemporary world, with the unpacking of various economic structures, the lowering of protectionist regimes, postmodern theories become even more relevant for feminist mobilization and dimensions. So, in different ways, there is a lot of opportunity to use these frameworks to do gendered social work. All these theories have emerged actually simultaneously and have also influenced each other. So, most of the theorists have met, discussed, debated, talked over what they see the world like, and what they see as differences and marginalization within different parts of the country and different parts of the world. So there has been a parallel process of theorization, and they have come together at different parts of time. That's the introduction to postmodern feminism.
Anju, your audio is not heard.
The theorization would tend to locate the one or two dimensions. Postmodern theories have given feminists an opportunity to look at the diversities that exist in the world over and societies over, because that is what informs people's lives, and specifically women's lives in the location where they live, the way in which they live, the meaning that they draw from their everyday experiences. And that is something that postmodernism has given the feminists an opportunity to understand. They also provide an opportunity to shape and promote new ideas. So what the postmodernist theorists have done very interestingly is that they have broken up this notion that theory has to be scientific and structured. So they have broken those boundaries, and when they have done that, feminists have found this a great opportunity to look at women's issue from the women's point of view herself. And when they do that, theorizations changes and new theories emerge and new ideas come out from mobilizing such women and women's movement and women's voices. And that is something that is very interesting in today's world. And feminists continue to work from different locations with different diverse possibilities and opportunities to entrust to women's problems and issues. So let's talk about structuralism now. Structuralism attempts to study the organizational structure and its relations as a complex system of interlinked parts. Structuralism essentially focuses on all these different structures and how they work together and mesh together and create different possibilities of power and disempowerment. Structuralism says that language, a structuralist says that language is one form of domination. Structuralists also enjoins upon every person to start looking at language and start thinking what is lawful and what is not, what is right and what is wrong, what is abuse and what is not abuse, what is homogeneous and what is creating hegemony within the language. And that is something that really gives us an opportunity to say that all languages have different ways of looking at the world. They have different worlds of worlds to depict the people and the science and the world that they see. So that's all about structuralism. Now, the next, Yamuna Vision will take out from here about post-structuralism and deconstruction. So, Yamuna?
Good morning. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
please go on, please go on.
I'm Yamuna Vijayan, pursuing my post-graduation from KE College. I will be presenting a paper about postmodern feminism. I will be continuing what Anju Rose Abraham was said. I will be saying about post-structuralism and deconstruction. Post-structuralists problematize structuralist ideas, and they said that no language or no meaning is same for anyone. That means they destabilize the whole notion of uniformity or the whole notion of progression. So language symbolizes and sustains the symbolic order is something that post-structuralists talk about. One is the formal idea that we talk about in the terms of state, sign, bureaucracy, and and all that. But what the post-structuralist has really bring into the whole world is fluidity. Can I share the screen to show the key elements?
Yeah, yeah, sure,
Yes,
sure.
yeah. Yes, you can. May I ask something? The third person is
Yes.
delivering. Then make it fast. You have already 3 more minutes.
Yes, Yamuna, you can go ahead.
Helen,
Continue.
uh, Helen fixes critics patriarchal system, so feminists can therefore borrow and understood, and not just borrowed, they expanded post-structuralist dimensions, and they have critic patriarchal system for creating binary opposition. For example, dichotomous pairs like active versus passive, women are passive and men are active, writing versus speaking, sun versus moon, day versus night, high versus low, just like that. Uh, Now moving on to the deconstruction. The another concept they bring is deconstruction. It is a word to analysis text by It is a word to analyze text by taking into the consideration the marginalized voices. So, Dalit feminists speak different languages, while upper caste women feminists speak different languages, and they come under the notion of deconstruction. Logocentrism, that is binary, also says that there is a no logic order to say that men are rational. Logic is something which is myth and some way to say that women are emotional and they are not so thinking, they are more vocal and voice for us. Now the rest of will be presented by Vidya. Vidya, are you there?
Yes,
Vidya?
I'm here. Can I
Anything?
audible?
Yes, Vidya, go ahead. No need of presenting, just go ahead. We are short of time, yeah.
Can I share the screen?
You have to, okay, but keep it short. Your time is almost
Okay.
up, it seems, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to postmodern feminism.
Yamuna, please
Fem-
mute yourself.
Okay.
Feminism theory is the extension of feminism into theoretical or philosophical discourses, and it aims to understand nature of gender inequality. It examines women's social roles, experience, interests, and feminist politics in a variety of fields such as communication, economics, education, and philosophy. Feminist theory focuses on analyzing gender inequality and promotion of interest.
Yeah, Vidya ma'am, you can go on speaking.
Wait, I am sharing.
Yeah, time is almost up. That's why I can't.
Okay. Postmodern feminism. Dichotomy for feminist actions when we use postmodern thoughts because there are difficulties that the postmodern emphasis on differences put feminists in a dilemma even though this acknowledging that there is a diversity and multiplicity. The whole problem lies in the fact that if there is so much diversity, if there is so much differences, where is the common ground? Where is that we can bring the women together because for movements to happen as we go back to social feminism. As a socialist feminist, feminists would like us to do subsume some of the diversity, some of these categories within a larger notion of class and women, but that is something the postmodern feminists are unable to really reconcile with because there is the whole notion that every woman, every person has the right to decide what kind of ideological position they came from. In that case, how do we mobilize people to come together is something. It is question for most postmodern feminism. The postmodern aims emphasize on multiple and diverse voices in contrast to feminist political action.
Vidya, please wind up
And
and it.
okay, thanks.
Okay, friends, three people have presented a paper on postmodern feminism. And first of all, I would like to appreciate your initiative in coming up with a paper presentation during a conference. It is always encouraged. A couple of things. I always look at co-authored papers with, I would say, a hermeneutics of suspicion. So I am happy with the fact that you people have, all three of you who have co-authored have in fact come to the conference and presented something that shows that you are genuine people and that you have contributed something to the paper, which is very much appreciable. But a
Thank you,
couple
sir.
of things, yeah, thank you. A couple of things you need to keep in mind. First, your presentation had a few avoidable errors. The names of people, the names of theories, typographical mistakes, those things must be avoided, because even though we are students, still we don't have that, you are MA students. So definitely you should refer books and make sure that your spellings and the names of people are correct. And secondly, it should always be a point for us when we are presenting a paper to build on existing knowledge. Yes, you have done a study on postmodern feminism, the major theoretical aspirations of feminism, postmodern feminism. All good, all good. But we should also look at how to build on what exists. Yesterday too there was a paper on postmodern feminism, and I felt both papers traced almost the same path. So maybe you can look at that presentation and see where you could have diverged, where you could have contributed something else that others may not have looked at. So that is my suggestion. Of course, it is encouraged, and do come up with more papers, but with something extra as you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, all the best. Any questions,
Thank you.
suggestions, anything, friends? Okay.
And guys, you can just refer to YouTube for this research methodology videos. It will be really helpful in choosing a title and narrowing down your research area, and it will be really helpful.
Yeah,
Just
ma'am, sure.
Okay, all the best, all the best. We
Yeah,
move to
thank you,
the
sir.
next.
now we'll go to the next paper presenter, Shatakshi ma'am. You're up.
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Rahul Sharma, you need to stop sharing your screen.
I think both of
No,
them are
he is the
co-chairing.
co-author.
Yeah.
Okay,
Dr.
sorry.
Sathish and Dr. Rahul
So
Sharma co-authoring a
I
paper
invite.
on the caretaker. Yes, please go ahead.
A very good morning to all.
I'm sorry, you are co-authoring. It was mistake on my part. You can
No worries, ma'am. So, I will start quickly. The title of my paper is Exploration of Isolation, Materialism, Racism and Absurdity in The Caretaker by Harold Painter. I will begin with a quick intro of Harold Painter. Harold Painter, the British playwright, screenwriter, director and actor, was born in Hackney, East London on October 10, 1930. His writing career spans almost 50 years. Some of his best plays are The Birthday Party, The Room, The Homecoming. He also acted for TV and radio. And what he is best known for is in 2005 he received the prestigious Nobel Prize for Literature and also the French Legion d'Honneur in 2007. His works are categorized as comedy of menace and memory plays. He acted in many theatre productions of some of his own works
Ma'am,
too.
you can skip the author biography part and you can, move
Okay,
straight
sir.
into the presentation.
Okay, I move on to the next slide. Okay. So here is The Caretaker, this overall story and plot. The Caretaker was the first of Painter's plays to bring him artistic and commercial success as well as national recognition. It has been adapted for television as well as films and has been numerous revivals all over the world, including at least one production with an all-female cast. Through the story of the two brothers and one tramp, The Caretaker deals with the distance between reality and fantasy, family relationships, and the struggle for power. It also touches on the subject of mental illness and the plight of the indigent. There are three characters. Aston, Mike, who are brothers, and Davis, who is a tramp and guest in the two brothers' house. Mike has the responsibility of his mentally ill brother Aston, and Davis is a migrant in search of some papers to prove his identity. Mike wants Davis to take the responsibility of his brother completely, which Davis reacts dubiously to. Later, he tries to take charge of the house but is thrown out by the brothers. The entire play takes place in a desolate and dilapidated room in a worn out house with a dripping roof and heaps of sundry items stacked everywhere. As in previous plays, Painter sets the caretaker in a shabby room, portrayed lower class characters, employed intrusion to generate the play's action, and juggle expertly with comedy, menace, and violence. The caretaker, which focuses more on human interaction within the setting of the room, much like the environment in Beckett's plays, it's packed in a single room. It was therefore the combination of an acquired familiarity with Pinter's dramatic style and the play's closer proximity to realism that made The Caretaker as acceptable to audiences and critics as any contemporary mainstream drama. The Caretaker takes place in a world characterized by absurdity. Life has no meaning or meta narrative. It is fragmented, chaotic, confusing, and hostile. The individual cannot rely on others, or society, or God, or even themselves to find meaning or value. The three characters here in this play represent three shades of identity crisis, insecurity, fear of isolation, struggle for existence, and lack of connection and communication. Painter's characters live in a time and place when race and national origin matter. After World War II, the war had brought a great trauma on the victims and survivors. The uneasiness, lurking fear, sense of loss, of attachment, and all that is visible in this play. Family relationships are significant in the play, but are depicted in a myriad of ways. Family can sometimes be detrimental and representative of the larger absurdity and meaninglessness of life. Aston's mother allows her son to be given electroshock treatment when he was very much younger. Davy's family is absent. He's a tramp. He's searching for papers to prove his identity. Whether or not it was he who rejected his wife or he is leaving part of the story out, he is still completely alone. Family can also be a burden, as Mike understands, because he has to put up with his brother's slowness and ineptitude. However, the largely silent relationship between Mike and Aston is the closest to the play comes to offering meaning and purpose. Mike, Aston, and Davis are certainly memorable characters, but they do not possess fully fledged identities. In fact, Painter suggests that modern life so beats down a person that they are unable to maintain a sense of the self. Davis is obsessed with shoes and his knife, suggesting he is mostly a traveler and has no fixed home. Aston has his Buddha as he seeks some kind of attachment and reference. The brothers closely heed the bucket of their wishes. It symbolizes when the play opens, there are lots and lots of buckets, empty buckets are scattered there on the floor. So buckets are hanging from the roof. So these buckets of their they symbolize the buckets of their wishes that are unfulfilled so long. Davis is an old bully and a stubbornly talkative man who suffers from wrong notions of self-importance, is given to ratiocination, his bad deeds, and treating everybody, especially blacks and aliens, in a very despicable manner, while Aston seems full of compassion, unsophisticated, and a bit gullible. It was with the caretaker that critics also began to see in Pinter's work more than psychological power games and symbolic fantasies. It doesn't take long for the audience to realize that Davis is a true reflection of that part of ourselves which is sinister and ungrateful. Very soon, Aston too starts showing his true colors and shows his own eccentric and impulsive behavior. There are two main ideas under the theory of Marxism: materialism and class structure. The brothers hoarding buckets and trash as their possessions shows the core materialistic mindset. The tension between Mike and Davis regarding his stay or his identity or his practices to capture the house are born out of this class and cultural struggle. The play evinces the unease of racial tension in 1950s London. Winter may be seen to be referring obliquely to the racial tension that, after the Notting Hill riots of 1958, provoked by the murder of a young West Indian, was evident particularly in London, where about one third of all immigrants were concentrated. Now I will wind up the conclusion. It was with the caretaker that critics also began to see in Pinter's work more than psychological power games and symbolic fantasies. The room in the play acts as a shelter, as a worm. Within here, they expect to be safe, which explains why, to Mike and Ashton, Davis must leave and why Davis finds it so terrifying that he cannot stay. However, the largely silent relationship between Mike and Ashton is the closest the play comes to offering meaning and purpose. This absurdity play has a happy ending as the two brothers come out safe from the lurking danger that could have been brought by Davis's scheme. When everything seems to be falling apart, they gather themselves and reunite. Thank you. Yes, Anju.
Dr. Shatakshi and Dr. Rahul Sharma.
Yes,
Thanks for the presentation. Um, any questions, participants? Well, I felt that you could have done a lot better. I mean, in the sense, the presentation part, you have done a PowerPoint presentation, and I found a few things missing in the PowerPoint presentation, especially, a couple of things not all right. One, when we are academicians, we are into this, so we can definitely avoid.
Sir, excuse me.
Yes.
Sir, your video was distorted, so please can you repeat what you just said?
Yeah, I was saying, in a couple of things, I just wanted to note about the presentation,
Yes,
I
sir.
mean the PPT part. One, we were asked to, we were not, it was not made compulsory to make a PPT presentation, but you have done that. But when we do that, we have to abide by the stipulations. One, you have to abide by the MLA guidelines. Two, certain very simple things. I know those are typographical things, but we have to be careful about such mistakes, especially italicizing the title of a book, of a text, for example. Those are things that we are expected to do in any presentation. And another thing I felt, this is something that many people miss. Never use full caps anywhere. Even in titles, we are not expected to use full caps. A full caps is a big no when it comes to journal publishing, research publishing. We find it good to look at when something is presented in full caps, but it is not taught either that this should not be done. But when we use full caps, it is a big no, and the softwares that these journals and publishing houses use, they will find problems with whenever we are using full caps in a text, because that is especially think about an ebook, for example. If things are put in full caps, that is so tiring to the eyes of the reader. So for these practical considerations, such things should be avoided. So full caps is a big no. I'm saying this for everyone actually, because we want to put our titles in bold font and in capitalization, but it can be avoided. It must be avoided, especially when you are writing research paper, academic writing. Another thing, we were asked not to read from the paper, and I felt you were reading not from the paper but from the presentation.
Presentation, yes, sir, we were
Probably you
from-
could have presented, because you have the ideas with you. So a presentation would have communicated more directly with the audience, and we could also have the author biography or the summary of the novel. These things, people use it, but when I think it is time for us to move beyond that type of paper writing, where we have an author biography and a summary of the novel. And even in the paper itself, unless the theme or the summary of the novel is so intricately linked with our analysis, we can skip that part and move to the analysis part. But thanks for the presentation, it was interesting. Any questions?
Thank you so much, sir. It was very nice to hear from you. We will keep all the points in mind next time.
Thank you so much. Okay, no questions. So Dr. Rahul, Dr. Shatakshi, thank you for the presentation. The caretaker, take care of the caretaker. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Richu ma'am.
Thank you, Shatakshi ma'am and Rahul sir, and I'm really sorry, sir, Rahul sir, for interrupting your presentation. And now, Dr. Neelu ma'am, it's not here, I think. So, we are Raja Pravina. Is Dr. Neelu ma'am here?
Dr. Neelu Khosla from Mumbai. Are you here? No. We are Raja Pravina. Are you here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you are here. Okay, please go ahead with your presentation.
Wait a second, sir. I'll do it now.
Okay. Raja Pravina is from Tyagarajar College, Madurai, and she is presenting a paper on Sita's Ramayana, a postmodern reading of the graphic novel. The next participant, Yashaswini Rathore. Be ready, because the others are absent. She has left the meeting.
She's here.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay.
Good morning.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah, you are audible, you are visible. Please go.
So I will present my screen, sir, before I start. So first of all, I would like to thank for this opportunity, and I would like to say that I have been following your blog for a very long time, sir, and I'm happy to be here to present my paper. Wait a second, sir. Okay, let me start. So as we all know, the detailing of mythology is one of the key themes in this postmodern literature. So the detailing all the epic that which has been told in one single perspective is now a trend, and we could see ample of books in that category. And for example, we can say Urmila, Unspoken and Unappreciated by Devi Raghuvanshi, and Kavita Kane's Sita's Sister, and Amish Tripathi's Sita, a Warrior of Mithila. And then we also have this Palace of Illusions by Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni, and I have already done a paper on Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni's The Forest of Enchantments. So all these things, all these novels, they try to say that we cannot stop with perceiving things in one narration or one perspective. So we need multiple narration, and we also need multiple perspectives towards those texts. So this graphic novel, it amused me when I purchased it, and really a colorful graphic novel. So when I read through this novel, it was really amazing that even 12-year child can read and understand this graphic novel. The thing is, they will get the Ramayana, whole Ramayana from Sita's perspective, and they can even feel how she felt very bad when she was banished by Rama and all that. So that they can get a different perspective from the single narration, the real epic which has been telecasted in TV channels, which has been told from told like tales by our grandparents. So they'll get different perspective from these books. So I think this is very very important for a kid to read and enjoy at the age of 12, and even for us we can enjoy this graphic novel. And to start with this novel, it has a lot of postmodern features in it. The graphic novel itself, the graphic novel itself, a postmodern form. It is not a separate genre; it is a form. So in that we have different genres like satire, comedy. Initially, it was very humorous. When the graphic novel started, it was not started as a form of novel. It was like comics. It was published in magazines, newspapers, and all that. But later only it evolved as a novel, a book, and people named it as graphic novel. So in these graphic novel, we could see some images, and we take these images as subtext. Okay, we try to decode what is there in that image and why this image is so, and what is the link between the dialogue inside the balloon, and what is the relation between the dialogue inside the balloon and the image. So we try to decode. So things are between the image and the text. So there are a lot of things inside this comics. So we can easily interpret when we are into it. So it is combination of both words and images, as we all know. So we can easily travel through it through the images. We need not read even on the we need not even read the words. We can just follow the images what is there. And then, as I told you, it started in Japan. Initially, it was very humorous, but later only it became popular in 1930s. They started focusing on all the important themes. They started talking about everything, every important theme of the period. Um, it can be gender issue. It can be scientific thing. So they started talking about all the important, major, predominant theme of the ages. And in this novel, we cannot stop with one particular postmodern feature. So I thought of throwing light on different postmodern feature I could find in this book. One is unattractive images of the epic characters, which is very unconventional. For that, I will show you some images. This image is image of Valmiki and Lava and Kusha. So in this image, you could see usually when we see Ramayana, when we just telecasted in our movies or any pictures we have in our home as an idol. So those pictures are very beautiful, and we could see it is very beautiful, extremely beautiful, super beautiful. But in this book, I think that author she purposefully compiled the images which is not very beautiful. Even Rama, Sita and Lakshmana, they look very weird, strange, I could even say. And this Hanuman in this right side, see, it is very strange. I really don't know why she purposefully compiled these images, because it is of course this is one of the postmodern features I found in this book. Usually it is breaking the structure. It is breaking the long constructed structure that all the epic characters should be very beautiful, and that is how it is narrated in Valmiki's Ramayana as well as Kamba Ramayana in Tamil too. Okay, so that is how it is narrated in all the epic, the singular narration. She looks very beautiful, he looks very beautiful, but it is very different here in this narration. So that is the first point I would like to tell. And the graphic presentation, so see, this is how this novel it starts. The very first page of the novel it starts from the middle, because Sita, she was banished by Rama and she is inside the forest, and that forest it speaks. for thousands of years, Dandaka forest slept. So since the forest is sleeping for a very long time, they use this black background. So towards the end of the page, we have this tag for thousands of years, the Dandaka forest slept. And similarly, there is another narration in the middle of the book, that is when Hanuman he travels to Sri Lanka through the ocean. So he gets blessings from Rama here in the left side, and he leapt across the ocean. So there we could see the blue page. So blue page, it represents the ocean. So that is how it is narrated, beautifully presented, very colorful. So we can easily I read this novel within 45 minutes. So it is very easy to read, and very interesting too. This is one thing I found. And metafiction. So why I say metafiction here, as you all know, metafiction is a postmodern feature where there is a story within a story. So here Sita, after she got banished from Ayodhya, she is inside that forest and she is weeping. So after hearing the weeping sound, the forest, it starts to talk. It started talking to Sita, and the forest, it asks, "Why are you crying? And what happened?" And Sita, she's going to narrate the story, the whole story, what happened in the previous, how she got married, and how they went to exile, and all that. So it is story within story. So I think this is a metafiction. We have this metafiction feature in it, and then they come back to present after that. So that is the present. That is the setting is inside the Dandaka first. So they move back to past, and then they come to present. So as I mentioned in this slide, the last feature, that is pendulum narration. They go back and then come. They go back and then come. So this pendulum narration is there in this novel. And then meta narration and mini narration. So this is another important postmodern theory, postmodern approach that was pioneered by Lyotard, a very famous French philosopher. And he says that, which is he could in this he brings this idea in his famous book, that is the Postmodern Condition, a report on knowledge, which was published in 1979. So in this book, he criticizes the state of order. Okay, this is order, this is how it should be, this is hierarchy, and all these things were questioned by Lyotard in this the postmodern condition. And he is completely against the process of universalization, singularization. So he says that anything which is very dominant, very singular, and which is forced into people is very wrong. So that is how it is. It is there in this a postmodern condition. I could read the lines by Lyotard. Incredulity towards meta-narratives. So he argues against the totalizing narratives. The narratives, meta-narration in the sense, a grand narration. It may be epic, it may be the history. So which makes people believe that this is how it has been and this is how it should be. You should be inside the line. You should be inside the structure. So people, they think that, oh, okay, this is the thing I should be inside. So these things are deconstructed. These things, these postmodern theories, they give us perspective. They help us in coming out of these things, and we can place ourselves outside the structure and we can think. So that is how it is guided in this book, The Postmodern Condition by Lyotard. So I have applied this particular approach in this book. So few things I would like to quote from the book, that is.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. You are audible, ma'am.
Please conclude your paper. Your time is up.
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. I'm going to conclude, ma'am.
Your time is up. Please do your conclusion quick.
Sure, ma'am. I'm going to wind up that. So with one last quote. So for this meta narration, I have one good example from this book, that is war. So war, this idea of war is glorified in the world of men. So when Sita, she questions this war. She says that war is little bit war is very good towards men, because after the war they are no more, and after their death they are glorified because for their they have sacrificed their life for their country. So men, they are glorified after the war, and they are not meeting the consequences of war. And then the only people who suffer after war is that is
female. Okay, so that is what she says. War in some ways is merciful to men.
Raja ma'am,
Okay,
please.
okay,
The other participants are waiting.
okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. We also found we can also see some hyperreal features in this novel. Hanuman, he's lifting whole mountain. So like that, we could see any number of hyperreal features in this novel. Okay, with this, I wind up my presentation. I'm looking forward for suggestions to enrich my paper in good ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajapraveen. It was interesting, and a special kudos for you to take up a 45 minutes read book and make it into a presentation. These days, people are very hesitant even to take one novel for a paper presentation, and they think that at least 3 or 4 novels should be there. So this was intelligent. It was easy in the sense you had to cover only a small book, but the presentation made a lot of sense. It was very good. And you have a couple of interesting observations in the chat box. Very interesting observations. I think the first one is something that you should look at. It would be better. Javi N says it would be better if you would refer to this form of work as a graphic book or manhwa. Now I don't know what manhwa is. Rather than a novel, probably that makes sense. Or is it a novel, Rajapravina? What do you think?
Yes, ma'am. A graphic, that is how it is. That is a genre called graphic form called graphic novel, sir. Okay, I will see to it, sir, and I will
Yeah.
graphic
Please check.
book.
Maybe
Sure, sir.
is it a novel? It doesn't look like a novel. No, the way it is, and it is very short. So does it meet the requirements of a novel? And is it described as a novel also? Probably
Okay,
we cannot say, probably even because this is a postmodern kind of thing. Probably they might even want to call it a novel. We don't know. So you may be right, but yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And second observation, the way in which the images are drawn, not aesthetically beautiful, are a part of the symbolic representation that the category needs to abide to, as per my knowledge. Only webtoon versions are required to meet the aesthetic appeal. Yeah, again an interesting observation, something that you can incorporate into your research. And you said it perfectly, I think. I felt so because you were saying that this is a postmodern rendering, and that was why the way Hanuman was portrayed. For example, it wasn't like the traditional ways in which we expect Hanuman to be portrayed. And aesthetics is something that from cultural studies onwards, probably all of postmodernism doesn't want to worry much about aesthetics. And if life is so tragic, why should we be so aesthetic about our representation? So all in all, it was very interesting presentations. Dear friends, come up with your questions. Have some suggestions. And who was somebody was posting Javi, and if you can communicate directly, come on audio and communicate with Rajapravina, that would be a good interaction.
Yes, Javi ma'am, please, you're welcome to interact with Raja ma'am.
Oh, okay. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible, ma'am.
Yeah, you came up with very interesting observations. Please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. No, actually, ma'am, the thing is that I've worked a lot on, graphic novels and webtoons and manas, and one of the prerequisites is, Indian culture. If you think about it, because you're representing a reworked version of Ramayana. If you look at temple drawings and paintings, if you look at art and architecture, which is very religious, it is not actually very aesthetically beautiful. It is the way that you see it in this particular book. However, now because aesthetics,
is it iconoclasm or something?
No, so it's actually a part of in digital literature, image and representation of illustrations is a part of just language in itself.
Okay, thank you. That's also a very fair observation. We don't find everything aesthetic, right? The images like this, I think religious icons, for example, I'm not sure if it is known as iconoclasm or something, but religious icons usually have such pictures. So, the first picture that you showed, where we had Lava and Kusha shown, I think that picture was more a religious icon kind of painting than a postmodern kind of one. I don't know. I'm not sure. You have to make sure.
Okay,
But
sure.
yeah, that is an observation too. Very good. So thank you, Raja Praveen, and very bold presentation. Very beautiful bold and beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you,
Rajaman,
sir.
it was really interesting. I mean, watching that Hanuman, I mean, Hanuman really had that an uncomfortable mustache, a wide grin. I was reminded of Meher's that penguin sculpture with the leg of the spins, the body of
Yes,
different
ma'am.
things getting connected
Together.
together.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
it was just very interesting. The pictures were really interesting, and it was a wonderful presentation. I'm sorry for cutting it short.
Oh, okay, ma'am. Somehow I tried to cover all the points. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm
And
glad
Richu,
that I met Mangattu sir. I have been following your blog for a very long time, and I see all the posts, seminar posts,
oh,
and this is my
thank you so
pleasure to be
much.
here, sir.
Oh, nice,
Thank you.
nice. Keep in touch. Okay,
Okay, sir.
Richu, mustache needn't always be irritating.
Yeah, and I think Kanisma will be very happy to see you today. Very happy she will be.
Okay. So we have one final presentation coming up. Um,
Yes, sure.
Yashaswini, yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Good
Please.
morning. Just a
Good
second, I'll
morning.
just share my screen. Is it visible? I'm audible enough?
Audible. It can be a little voluble.
Okay.
The presentation is visible. Yeah.
Alright. Is it better now, sir?
Yeah. Good.
Okay. Good morning to all. I won't eat in much time. I know I have 10 minutes. I'll stick to it. Don't worry. So I wanted to start on a
Actually,
place.
ma'am,
Hello?
one paper presenter has not turned up, so you
Okay.
have to.
Okay, I have time. All right. So I'll come to the title of the paper last. Why is it called Prisons of Smile? Technically, it deals with one of the episodes of Black Mirror. I believe one of the presenters yesterday presented on Black Mirror as well. And it was another episode. It's an anthology. So every season, every episode is different. It's not linked. What I'll start with, a little bit about my background. I have masters in psychology and literature. So my approach towards research is always psychology based. I bring in terms, I bring in data, I bring in statistics because I think bringing them together, it provides a more detailed understanding. So I'll start with the presentation. The second slide. Okay. So human beings have always actively managed their self-presentation and expression to conform to our unique social settings. But in the 21st century, the internet age or digital age, this has become more complicated. Why? Because there are far more avenues to express, to present, and even to compare oneself to others. Is it better, sir, if I present like this? Is the screen more clear?
You can make it full screen probably, but it is fine.
Okay, it is actually full screen on my side, but no problem at all. Okay, I'll continue. So according to KPIs, it's a data analysis website, they say that there are more than 4.62 billion social media users around the world in January 2022. This equates to 58.4% of the total global population. Now, social media users have only increased exponentially. In the last year, there are new 424 million users joining social media. Another data by GWI reveals that a typical social media user would explore 7.5 different social media platforms in 1 month. And assuming that most of us sleep for 7 to 8 hours, we spend around 2.5 hours of our waking life on social media. Social media is just not Instagram or Facebook, it also includes YouTube and your different types of TikToks and other platforms as well. So this means 15% of our waking time is spent on social media.
WhatsApp is also social media, by the way. Now, Facebook, of course, remains the world's biggest widely used social media platform, but there are upcoming 6 social media platforms as well, which claim 1 billion users, monthly active users. And half of these platforms are owned by Meta, that is Facebook. So just imagine most of our data in the hands of one big giant. Okay, it's scary enough. Then why do people use social media? These are the main reasons: keeping in touch, posting content, finding content, news, watching live streams, etc. etc. Now, why do I talk about this before I start talking about the focus of my research paper? Is the concept of hyperreality given by Jean Baudrillard. So, in the age of internet and social media, it gains new importance because our virtual selves are very far removed to what our present physical self looks like. For example, right now I'm presenting this paper. My laptop's camera is reflecting a very different picture of what I look actually right now as compared to what you can see. Right? I have blurred my background. The camera quality is very good, so I appear to be a little better looking than I am. But it's a Sunday morning. I haven't slept properly. There are eye bags, and I look terrible. Okay, so there's this difference that comes in. Hyperreality, as he defined it, is the generation of models of real without origin or reality. It's a representation, it's a sign without any original. So, in terms of entertainment, information, communication that the media, digital media and social media provides, the experiences become more intense and involving, especially in the case of, say, immersive gaming, or in case of where I have my OTT platform in front of me and I keep watching movies or I binge watch a series. Okay, and there is where everyday life becomes banal, depressing, or even boring, and your virtual life becomes more interesting and interesting. Now, I'll come to the episode Nosedive. This particular episode is part of an anthology called Black Mirror. It's a British science fiction television series created by Charlie Brooker. It's sort of the entire series creates debate about representation of dystopian futures of Western societies, and each episode focuses on technology. So our relationship with technology and giving it a dystopian turn. None of the technology that they show is impossible in today's day and age. So this particular episode focuses on social media and social interaction. How? I'll come to it. It's the first episode of show's third season. It's written by Rashida Jones and Mike Schur, and it released in October 2016. Now, this episode follows a protagonist called Lacey Pound. She's a young woman living in a world where every interaction, whether it's online or offline, it is ranked by rating. Very similar to how we rate a Zomato delivery boy, or how we rate delivery services of Myntra, Flipkart, Amazon, okay, or how we like or dislike pictures on Facebook, Instagram, and so forth, so forth. Now, everybody rates, everybody has that power, and everybody is rated also. So, for example, this interaction, you can rate me, I can rate you, okay? Depending on how our expressions are, how engaging I am, how interesting I appear, how socially confirming I am, okay? And this rating is just not limited to just a rating like it is on Facebook. This rating impacts people's life in terms of their job, their housing, their friends, access to various services. So, for example, on the screen you see, what happens in this world is you're implanted with a contact lens which connects to your phone directly, and when you're viewing a person, whether it's offline or online interaction, you can see a number popping below their name. That is their rating. So the rating is out of 5. If you are between 4.5 to 5, you're up in the hierarchy. 4 to 4.5, good enough. 3, average. Below 3 is considered very bad because it's down there in the hierarchy. So if you're below 3, you won't get access to good hotels, good rental services. You won't be allowed access to, say, the best class flying air tickets or train tickets, things like that. Another example of rating system. This woman is 4.6. So when the number pops up, it also pops up the social media feed of that person, what they posted, what they are like, what is their life like. I'll move on. We are focusing on Lacey and the comparison between Lacey's world. Yes, ma'am. I need to wind up.
No, that is just an accident. Just go on, take your
Oh,
time.
okay, thank you. So, the comparison between Lacey's World and Truman Show, a movie released in 1998, which has been the subject of research in postmodern theory a lot. In Truman's case, Truman is born in a reality show and everybody is a paid actor. He's the only real thing. And people are hooked to his life because they've lost in that simulation and simulacra and hyper reality, they've lost the touch with reality. So Truman is their escape, or Truman is their window to what is real. So he is the only one who doesn't know what's going on. Everybody is paid in his life to act, from his mother to his wife to his best friend. And in Lacey's world, nobody is paid, but everybody is putting up an act of being nice, cordial, friendly, always happy. Okay. So the comparison I want to draw attention to quickly, I'll move on. This is our protagonist, and she starts with a 4.2 rating, and throughout her journey in the episode, she attends a friend's wedding and how things spiral down, and she comes down to a rating of 1 or even 0, and she is jailed because she has this meltdown where she wanted to improve her rating because she wanted to buy a new house, and that new house requires a 4.5 rating. So all her dreams crashes down, and finally when she's reduced to a rating of 1 or 0, she is able to free herself and express herself and be herself, what she truly is. My paper also explores two other characters, Ryan and Susan. Ryan is a protagonist's brother who has a rating of 3.7. He doesn't really leave the house, but he has this rating because he is in the circle of online gaming community. So people who play games together, they can also rate each other. That's why he has a 3.7 rating, which is an average rating. And he is very wary of Lacey's behavior, that why she's putting up this act, why is she pretending to like a friend when that friend has betrayed her. Then there's another character called Susan, who has been through the system, who has had a rating of 4.6, and it didn't help her when her husband was dying. Her husband was a 4.3 rater, and he wasn't able to get a bed in hospital because someone had a higher rating than him. So she has been through it all, and she realizes that this system of confirming the self, the system of presenting and preparing and performing an act doesn't help anyone. It's better to just be yourself, even if you have a low rating. Of course, it will affect your socioeconomic conditions, that's a separate thing, but at least you'll be happier, you'll be freer. I'll wind it up. It seems like an exaggeration, the world that Nosedive creates. But let me bring your attention to China's social credit system that they had planned to roll on in 2020. They had initially proposed it way back in 2014. They said by 2020, we'll bring in this social credit system. So what will the social credit system do? You'll have enterprises and you'll have human beings as individuals. Everyone would be rated in terms of good behavior, voted up and voted down in case of bad behavior. So for example, if an enterprise or a company pays tax, yes ma'am, I need to wind up. Yeah, just give me a second. So they have not technically rolled out the entire social credit program, but they in 2020 have rolled out in bits and pieces. So it's right now it's very voluntary. An enterprise can go for it, but it has helped them in COVID time in helping to nudge business behavior, encourage containment of COVID spread, and punish COVID-related crimes. And it also encouraged the resumption of work post-COVID in China. Punishments can include things like travel bans, slow internet, you won't get access to best hotels and luxury items. It hasn't been rolled out for individuals as such, the rating system, but for enterprises, they are slowly rolling out. And it's very scary because your entire data would be fed into a big giant. It becomes a tool of surveillance, how Orwell had predicted last century. And similarly, Nosedive also tries to warn us. Though Nosedive is not that political, it's more about the individual's self-presentation, expression, and freeing of that self. That's it. That's my time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yashaswini. That was a nice nosedive into the advantages of transdisciplinary research. You said you are into psychology and literature, and Immediately you made it clear why the national educational policy says that by 2040 we have to go transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. So it really helps that, and I thought you have done a mixed methods research, in the sense you had brought in quantitative data and there was qualitative analysis as well. And I think this is a very good example for students who would want to do this mixed method transdisciplinary research. It was interesting. It was for some time you look like a scientist, and then you look like a literature person. So that was interesting. So thank you for that presentation. It was a lot informative. That's what I would say. And of course, the paper was also nice. Any questions, participants? Our participants are very good. They don't want questions, and so they don't ask questions probably. Okay then. Yeah, Yashaswini wants to ask the audience some questions. Yes.
No, no, no. I was just coming to the question of the title, Prisons of Smile. It's
Yes,
because
yes.
we've created these prisons where we have to behave a certain way online.
Is
We've
it on selfies that you are referring to?
not exactly, not
Okay.
selfies, but that entire culture of only presenting the best foot forward, putting the best foot forward, or presenting a happy picture when we are vacationing, when we are having a good meal. We don't really post pictures of when we are crying or when we are sad or when we are breaking down. Of course, there are people who do that, but we've created this prison ourselves, this prison of social media. We've gone there voluntarily, and then we've created this prison ourselves. That's why prison of smile.
That is why it is known as a cell phone, right? Yeah.
Yeah, until the next paper presenter join, we can talk about your paper, ma'am. Your paper, I mean, it just sent goosebumps down my spine. I can show it. I can't show it here. That is a limitation of this social media thing. I mean, first they make you addict. First they make you slaves to it, and then when we try to break off, I mean, just look at this platform. Without Google Meet and without this conference, wouldn't be possible. There are
That's true.
all over the world,
I have
and
a point to this. Miss
Yashaswini, yes.
Yes. So you said like we don't post the pictures when we are sad, or when we are going into that lane. But do you think even if we post, we will be accepted? Like most of the times, people want to see happy faces. They don't accept the fact that you are sad. So they say like ये तो क्या है, पूरा दिन sad ही रहती है या depressed ही रहती है. They don't want to hear you out. So I think more of talking about it, it's time that we actually change the narrative. Like rather, like we need a step to take. Like if somebody posts, we need to accept the fact that yeah, he or she can be sad. Like why to always post happy pictures? Like you just said, like people go on vacations and they post happy pictures. But what about those people who are trying to get an acceptance even when they post when they are sad, but they're not able to get that acceptance? So do you want to throw any light on that?
Okay, ma'am, I'll come to it. First of all, every platform has a different algorithm and working method. For example, on Twitter, you have politicians coming in and speaking anything, right? And they're not exactly thrown in the jail. Like some of the comments are atrocious, right? Even celebrities. That's a different platform. I was talking more about the picture blogging because the episode deals with the social interaction and how you present yourself. So that involves a visual. So if it comes to WhatsApp or say something like YouTube or Instagram where you're using pictures, right? Your question is when we post sad pictures, it can be seen as a call for attention. It could be called as attention seeking. Somebody could just shrug it under the carpet and say, "Arey, it's boring. I don't want to look at it. I would rather look at someone dancing video. You have these trends going on every day." So agreed, that is there. But then that makes us question also, who are we including in our friend circle, right? Because I have a choice there as well, who I want to share it with, share my information with. Then I question the kind of choices I've made in making that circle, that they're not accepting of my that side of personality and behavior, which is very normal, which everybody goes through, and not everybody is comfortable in sharing. So if I am comfortable, why is it not being accepted? I think that's a question we need to ask ourselves.
Right, ma'am. Right. So it's all about the company we have, basically. The choice of people we have in our life.
Yeah, previously I was calling it self-made prison, but like one of my supervisors said, no, go with prisons of smile, remove that self-made, because it conveys that idea that digital
Yes.
media and social media is a prison that we made ourselves.
Right, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Can I say something?
Yes,
Sure,
yes,
sure.
yes, go ahead.
So, what I felt that if we are genuinely sad, or if we are in need of someone, or what I want to say is, and that this social media, not only social media, but the circle which we are in, or we have friends and relatives, even our family members, we are not comfortable to share those things, those feelings with them. So social media is altogether different. We just uh, we feel some gap in our day to day life or something with that. But when we genuinely need something, I don't think it will help, or I have not experienced that it helps. I don't know about others. I'm not generalizing things, but that is my personal experience.
Ma'am, like anything, it has its pros and cons. Like
Yeah, that's true. That's
there
true.
are people who have found a voice through social media,
Yeah, that's
especially
true.
people from the queer community. They have really found a voice on
Yeah.
social media. So again, the choices that we make.
Yeah, that's true. That's completely true. And why social media is my favorite interest, my favorite subject, because I also spend a lot of time on that, and I have seen so many things. I do marketing and all those things on this social media. So yeah, that's right. And one more thing, Neelu madam, I called her and she called me also, but she cannot. I mean, I think she has limited knowledge about all this Google Meet and all. So maybe she is finding difficulties joining it. In I
Well,
have guided her,
if
but
somebody can do what Niranjan sir did yesterday, such a magnanimous gesture, then
Calling.
that would be amazing if we can help Nilu
if I
madam.
can do that, then I will call her
But
again.
not today, not now, because we
Yeah,
have only
because
five
we have
more
only
minutes
yeah, that's right.
left. Yashaswini ma'am, I just wanted to tell you something. I felt something, presence of smile. Uh, I feel that maybe you can look at a better word than smile, because it is not always smile. Present is fine. Presence of other kinds of expressions are also there, and I find people expressing their anger a lot on social media. And as you said, attention seeking is also there. So probably your earlier title made a bit more sense than the title that you originally planned. And maybe instead of present, a cell, cell phone, and that can be having a better it could be a more suggestive word, because it will have the cell and the cell, present as a cell, and the cell phone as a cell. So probably, but
Yes,
this
sir.
word smile, I think you can just think of a better
Okay,
option.
right.
Yeah.
All right, sir. Thank you so much.
But that was just plain amazing. I mean, was smiling. But I definitely agree to you. I mean, even in the Google Meet, when Google Meet is coming and the camera is on, we have a complete different personality. It's like we are being monitored. That Foucault
Surveillance.
surveillance is totally on, and when the camera is off, the net is off, and we are totally disconnected, and we are right. We are sitting our foot on the ground, then we are completely different people. That is what this online. If I start talking about and
Yeah, which surveillance means hyper reality, right? Yashasini was speaking about hyper reality when you turn on the camera. So yeah, there is a marriage of surveillance and hyper reality happening on screen.
And it's very scary to the
Mm.
extent it's moving. Like it's very scary.
Sometimes we look scary on camera. Okay, so I think we shall just about wind up. So we have had the morning session at Slaughterhouse 5. and we have had 6 paper presenters. One of the presenters was absent. So we have had 6 paper presentations, and we began with a lot of things about Poetics of Gender and Corporeality, which was an excellent paper. And then we looked at Elif Shafak's novel, again a very interesting paper that spawned a lot of critical thoughts in the listeners. Then we had a couple of co-authored papers, one on postmodern feminism and the other where we took care of the caretaker. And finally we had a very interesting paper on the adaptation of Ramayana, Sita's Ramayana, the graphic book or manga series as one of our audience was suggesting. And finally we have wound up the session with our presence of self-expression, presence of smile, and the transdisciplinary paper that was that employed a mixed method to bring some very interesting, very startling findings about what we are doing on the social media. So it was an enriching session, delightful session, and